Appreciate him for joining the show today. To Hall of Fame columnist John McClain with Craig Smoke and Paul Catalina and David Smoke on 365 Sports. John, first of all, glad you're feeling better.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So, John, it's draft week. The Texans pick at 42. Have you made any adjustments or changes, or is it hard to even project out because there's 41 teams to pick before them?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Paul, because I write for HoustonTexans.com, and I'm doing a Texans mock draft tonight to be posted tomorrow. They have 9 picks, starting with 42nd overall. And my first 3 are going to be a defensive tackle, a cornerback, and a safety, because they need help at all those positions on defense. They play what I call a murderer's row of quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, it's amazing. Jordan Love, Jared Goff, and Aaron Rodgers. It's amazing the quarterbacks they play. So they better beef up their defense because they don't need a lot on offense when it comes to starters. They need depth, but they still need to improve the defense going against the first-place schedule.
John, the Texans' new uniforms are one of the worst-kept secrets, little leaks here and there along the way. I know you at one point got to get like the behind-the-scenes look at them. They are now fully unveiled, which I'm sure is a huge relief to all involved. Now that they're out there, what are your thoughts, and what have you kind of gathered from the Texans shaking up their style a little bit?
It's the first time they've done it since they were born, and I wrote a column yesterday on HoustonTexans.com about the inaugural uniform reveal, in which I spent the day with the owner, Bob McNair, and I kind of chronicled what that day was like compared to today. And the thing that everybody's talking about here, because there's a lot of speculation about this, they call it H-Town blue. Everybody else calls it Columbia blue that the Oilers wore. Well, the Titans have the rights to that, and originally when the Titans heard that there was going to be some light blue in these uniform changes, they went to the league, and the league had to make sure they approved it. And actually, there is more light blue in their alternate uniform than I thought, and I think it looks great. And I'll guarantee you the Titans are infuriated about it, the owner, Amy Adams-Strunk, but the NFL signed off on it.
John, there's a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, and of course there always is a lot of talk every year about the quarterbacks and how the first 4 or 5 or so might be quarterbacks for the first, whatever. If you start to see speculation about who's jumping up or who's falling down, is it probably just some sort of smokescreen?
No, I think teams are that need quarterbacks because there's so many. There's a report today that the Raiders are trying hard to get the second pick from Washington so they can get Jaden Daniels. And then there's talk, well, does Washington really want Jaden Daniels or do they want Drake May? They're saying people are saying they want Jaden Daniels because he plays the style that Cliff Kingsbury, their new offensive coordinator, has played at Texas Tech and with the Cardinals. So I think if somebody's going to be able to trade up, going to be Minnesota trading up to get J.J. McCarthy, maybe 5th overall for the Chargers. Chargers have a lot of needs. They could get 2 ones this year, a 1 next year, and more. But if you want your quarterback, I tell people, if you have a guy you think can take you to the Super Bowl, almost no price is too high, especially 2 number 1 picks and then something in the future. Because would the Texans give up 2 number 1s for C.J. Stroud? Of course they would. And if you think a guy could do for you what Stroud did for the Texans, you better make that deal because you always can fill in around the quarterback using free agency, the draft, trades. This thing about bypassing a franchise quarterback because you got a lot of needs is hogwash to me. You've got to get the quarterback or you're just spinning your wheels.
Do you think the Giants will be aggressive for a quarterback if the ability to do so falls to them?
Oh, that depends on how highly rated that they have somebody like, say, J.J. McCarthy. And I don't think they can stay at 6 and get it. I think you got to go up. And all this will play out in real time because, say you traded up to the 5th spot and you're going to take McCarthy, and then all of a sudden somebody trades up with Arizona at 4 and they take McCarthy, and you're, out of luck. And so I think it'll all come down when the teams are when they're on the clock. And as far as the Giants, the coach and GM did not draft Daniel Jones. He got that monster contract. He's going to be there one more season. You can't hope you're going to get his replacement next year. If they like a quarterback like McCarthy, they got to do everything they can to get him. Otherwise, Jones will be gone. It'll be good riddance on the part of a lot of people. But then they're going to be like the Raiders. They're going to start Jared Stidham. They're going to be like Denver. Going to start, I'm guessing it's not going to be Zach Wilson. No, Denver's going to start Jared Stidham. And then they trade for Zach Wilson. It's amazing how many teams out there continue to have issues with quarterbacks. Next year's draft is not going to be anywhere nearly as good as this one. When Quinn Ewers is looked at as a number 1 pick, you better get your quarterback this year.
John, there's been so many stories on the day of the draft. I'll never forget the Laramie Tunsil story about the mask. We were in, I think it was in Chicago, I believe, when that happened. It could have been another place, but when of course, ended up with the Texans. Now, is there a favorite phone conversation story that you've learned along the way as the draft pick is supposed to be turned in by a team, whether it's one you've covered or somebody else, and it just got haywire and confused or anything like that?
One year, the Buccaneers, the guy who was in New York, handed in a name, and the name was not the player they wanted to draft. It was Penn State guard Sean Farrell. And the guy had misheard. He turned it in. They looked like idiots. Then Sean Farrell became a very productive guard for them. Bo Jackson told the Buccaneers right up till the end, do not draft me. I won't play for you. They did it anyway. He didn't play for them. Just like John Elway told the Colts, I'm playing baseball with the Yankees. I do not want to play for Frank Kush, the head coach, and they drafted him anyway. Then they had to make one of the worst trades in NFL history when they sent him to Denver. So there's been some manipulating. The thing about Eli Manning, because Archie and Eli didn't want to play for A.J. Smith. He was general manager of the Chargers. That was a really, really a difficult guy. And that ended up working out great for the Giants and great for the Chargers. They got Phillip Rivers. But if they hadn't done that and gotten Rivers, they would have kept Drew Brees, who's going to go to the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility.
John, Jerry Jones told the media today in a very, very lengthy press conference that he is very happy with their roster, and obviously he's not going to say otherwise. But the Cowboys have, run into this salary cap hell. I wonder, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm starting to think that Jerry gets a lot of the blame for this, but if they just let Jerry loose to go do what he wanted to do, they might be a little bit better, but I think Stephen Jones is holding him back.
Yep, Johnny Manziel would have been the quarterback.
That's true. That's true.
The thing about the Cowboys, I strongly believe they will sign Dak Prescott to a multi-year deal, lowering his salary cap. They will be fair with him because they don't have any other choice. Because if they're not, then he can walk. But he wants to be there. He's a great guy. He's a good leader. What's he won? 2 playoff games. But I think they'll get that worked out. That'll clear up a significant amount of cap space for next year. And I think with Will McClain is the most influential guy when it comes to personnel. He's turned down GM jobs to stay there. No telling what Jerry Jones pays him, like a general manager, I'm sure. But I think the Cowboys will have a good draft.
They've done well with Will McClay. They've drafted well. There's no way anyone knows exactly the right formula, but some school or programs seem to have done better over the years, whether it's the Steelers or others. Is there somebody in particular that you think might have had the best blueprint of anybody else overall in the last 25 years when it comes to personnel and the draft?
The Ravens are always good. They won 2 Super Bowls. One of the things they do, they will let players walk and get a third-round compensatory pick and reload. And whether it was Ozzie Newsome or Eric DeCosta, who's now the general manager, they have a tried and true formula that John Harbaugh believes in, and that's why, barring injury, they're almost always a Super Bowl contender despite taking low. Now, the Patriots picked low, but it wasn't like they were loading up on talent. They had the greatest quarterback in history who bailed them out and helped them win the 6 Super Bowls. But when I look at teams now, I look to the Raiders. And by the way, people wonder. I see speculation about the all-time greatest draft. Without question, there's nobody can even bring anybody else up. In 1974, Chuck Noll had total control of the Steelers, and he picked Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Jack Lambert, Mike Webster, and 4 Hall of Famers, and signed Donnie Shell as a free agent, and he's in the Hall of Fame too. There has never been a hall like that, and never will be again.
Golly, I didn't realize those guys were all at the same time. That's
Yep.
nuts, John.
By the way, Paul, I thought of one more story about you wanting Jerry to run the show.
Yeah.
When Quincy Carter was coming out of Georgia, his personnel people told him, we can get this guy in the 4th or 5th round. And Jerry had been making calls. And when it came time in the 2nd round, Jerry insisted they draft him. They said, no, Jerry, don't do it. We can get him in the 4th round. No, I got sources telling me if we don't take him, somebody else is. So they took him in the 2nd round, and we all know how that worked out.
Yeah, I was there the morning he was cut.
I'm glad that you shot down my theory.
Sorry about that, Paul.
No, I'm trying to figure out, there are teams that are far worse at this than the Cowboys that have
Absolutely.
that have actually gone further than the Cowboys in the playoffs. The Cowboys seem to find their way into a new puddle of crap every time that kind of all comes from the same strategy, but it's a different puddle of crap each time instead of it doesn't make sense that they have not been able to, for 30 years now, break through.
It's only 30 years. You're getting impatient.
Yeah, but I mean, they have had they're measured in some franchises, like in college, certain schools are measured by championships or runs, but they've been good. They've been good. There's some that have languished in bad forever and ever and ever, Paul.
Yeah.
At least they get your hopes up. At least you have your blood flowing, right?
I don't know. Right now, I'm just so I don't have any kind of hope. Every time I see if somebody who's a fellow Cowboys fan, oh, this is the year. I'm shut up. We're not friends anymore. Go away. Don't follow down the primrose path.
Well, just remember this, and I hope you can get some confidence in this. Don't forget, the Cowboys are all in.
Yes. John, I told Paul this. I was driving from a meeting, and I was listening to the start of a Jerry, Stephen, Will McClain, who I'd never really heard much from, and also Mike McCarthy press conference that began at 1:30. On the way to the studio at around 2:40, they were still going. It was still going. They're drafting.
Did Will McClain get to say anything?
I never heard him once during that time. I don't know if he did or not, but
he's been very smart to stay on the back burner and be content to collect millions while Jerry and Stephen were out front.
Yep. All right, John, you and I traded a text or two about Scott Drew. Obviously, that's now an old story. He is locked in. Not only that, they pick up the guard from Duke. Jeremy Roach, who joined us yesterday, among some others that are probably on the way. Your thoughts about your alma mater taking care of business there?
Well, first of all, I think that was tremendous. Second, I see Alvin Brooks may go to Kentucky and take, what's that kid's name, Lanscombe? Anything to that?
Well, I don't know if he's going to take Edgecombe, and I don't know if he's taken the job yet, but he's certainly interviewing.
Well, Edgecombe, hopefully he won't take Edgecombe, and I hope they get that big man from Tennessee, because I do weekly show in Knoxville, and they don't want to lose him, but he's gone. What a deal that would be. And as I told you, David, whether the $1.5 million is true or not, it needs to stay out there, because that means every kid, every parent, every agent's going to be thinking about Baylor.
Yep.
And that 1.5.
Absolutely. By the way, they just released the Big 12 and Big East 2024, the battle, the back and forth. Baylor is going to play at UConn, the two-time defending champions against Baylor. That ought to be a hell of another one of those great non-conference games that will test a few people. All right, John, again, glad you're feeling better. Hope you're doing well. Have a great day, sir.
Guys, thank you very much. Sick 'em Bears.
Sick 'em Bears. John McClain from, of course, NFL Hall of Famer, getting ready for the NFL Draft, which starts on Thursday night. By the way, speaking of one of our sponsors,